Today's episode of Vice Versa, we're being joined by a very special guest to talk about the latest developments with Tesla full self-driving, as well as the state of autonomous driving with the competition. And as usual, I'm joined by Ricky Roy. How you doing, Ricky?
Doing well, Matt. Another week and another special with a guest. So I'm excited. This one I've been looking forward to for a while. So hopefully you guys are all here. You have a lot of questions. We will keep track of them, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And today we're being joined by Chris from Dirty Tesla. I'm sure a lot of you have seen his videos. They're great videos. I've been really enjoying, Chris, the videos you've been putting out about the full self-driving experiences as you've been driving around town. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much. It's really fun to share, and thanks for having me.
Yep, absolutely. So, Ricky, how was your video this week?
So we were a little bit delayed, but it is coming out. We did a video on battery recycling. It was one we've been working on for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it'll be going out right after the show, probably. What about you?
Nice. I put a video out on 5 technologies that were debunked that actually ended up changing the world. It was kind of a fun, different kind of video to put out, but yeah.
And Chris, what about you? What was your last video you posted?
My last one was a full self-driving video, the beta going in downtown and kind of talking about my surprise that the new beta testers are surprised at some of the shortcomings of the beta.
That's awesome. Well, to jump off of that, we could just jump right into the Tesla full self-driving. The 10.2 was released, and they've been inviting more people into the fold. And as you mentioned, some people are kind of surprised about what they're experiencing. I'm curious if you could kind of give us an overview as to like what you've been experiencing over the course of being in the full self-driving program.
Sure. So it came out about this time last year, and it allowed the car overnight to go from only highway driving and changing lanes on highways and taking exits to doing pretty much everything point A to point B, with the exception of a few really advanced maneuvers. And it gave the car a lot more freedom. And so old autopilot kind of sits in its lane and maybe makes a lane change really slowly, whereas beta is making decisions kind of on the fly, reacting to the things around it. And so that initial use of it can be a little surprising in that it makes a lane change or avoids a car or avoids some debris in the road, and you didn't expect it. So the development of that over the past year has been amazing, really, because it has been getting a lot better. And the initial run was very sketchy, and it still does some surprising moves. But yeah, it's definitely improving over time.
That's awesome. And so are you happy with how it's progressed with this latest release?
Yeah, there's pretty much every release, there's improvements and then some setbacks as well. And I think Elon Musk even mentioned that early on, that it would be kind of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of process going through this. And so overall, the last release or two have really improved some of the basics, like making turns, left and right turns, where it used to, like on a right turn especially, get a little close to the curb and you'd probably take over or maybe let it do it, but maybe be a little nervous you're going to curb a rim or something. Now it'll go to take that right turn. If it's close, I mean, it just like a human would do, moves out a little bit more and then completes the turn. So those little fine techniques have been really good. And then same thing with left turns, especially if you have a green arrow, like you have the right of way, the car just goes through them so perfectly. Whereas in the past, even when you had right of way, it would be a little hesitant. And then some of the setbacks in this version I'm on right now, for whatever reason, I'm getting a lot more of these little phantom braking events. Nothing too bad. It doesn't drop from, say 50 to 20 miles an hour. But you'll be going down the road at 45 and it'll drop, 3 or 4 miles an hour here and there. And that's been a little worse. And, those kind of moves are annoying pretty much.
Yeah.
Your new Model Y doesn't have radar, does it?
Yeah, correct. So I had a Model 3 with beta on it, and that entire time beta was using the radar that was in my Model 3. And with all the crazy, trade-in prices and supply chain things, I decided to trade my Model 3 to Tesla because they were just giving such a good deal. I upgraded to the Model Y, and I got one of the Tesla Vision versions, so there was no radar in my car at all. So no hardware radar. At the same time, when I got the next version of beta added to my Model Y, it was the first version to not use the radar anyway. So as far as I know, at that time, I was the only beta tester that physically didn't have a radar, whereas the rest of them were losing their radar ability with that update. So it's only using the cameras at this point.
That's really cool. So you mentioned that you were surprised at how surprised some of the new beta testers are. Like, what's the feedback you've been hearing?
So like one of the things, so some of these things are because even if you watch the videos, it's not the same. If you have not been in a beta car, watching the videos is just not the same as actually sitting in the car, even if you're just the passenger. So one of the things I'm hearing a lot is people are surprised at how fast it accelerates out of turns. And I like it, I guess, because I'm used to it. But when it takes, like, say, a right turn, if it goes onto a high speed road, I mean, it accelerates right up there. It's not, foot to the floor or anything, but it's a pretty good rate of speed that it's taking to get up to the speed limit. And so I've been hearing that. Oh, okay. I've been hearing that. You changed it anyway, so that's perfect. People are surprised that it accelerates so fast. That kind of catches them off guard, which that's fine. But the other thing is they're surprised at some of the mistakes it's making. Sometimes it's, taking turns when they don't expect, or maybe moving within the lane when they're not expecting it. And so, it's different when you're in the car. But if you've seen a lot of the videos, you should know that hands on the wheel is not a joke. You really need to be ready at all times.
Like, how many interactions do you think you have to kind of take over on a typical drive when you're testing it?
So on older videos, I actually was keeping track of all the interventions and disengagements per mile. So a disengagement would be I totally take over. An intervention is I just maybe use the accelerator or use the turn signal or something. And it's maybe like if we do per miles per, every maybe 3 or 4 miles, I'm doing something, whether that's touching the accelerator to help it move through just because it's going slow, or actually physically taking over because it's going to make a mistake. So yeah, every few miles.
Yes, and when you're in I think it was your last video, I saw you were kind of trying to go around a truck that was like kind of out in the road, and it looked a little hairy there because it looked like it was trying to go around when it shouldn't have been trying to go around because it looked a little too tight.
Yeah, I think that's the. That's later in the video. Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a time I took over because it was just simply too thin. I mean, a human couldn't do it either. You just physically couldn't fit through that space. So the car should have just stopped and waited. And to be fair, maybe it would have done that, but it got close enough where I just decided, I'm not comfortable. I'm going to just tap the brake, wait till we have a little bit of room, and turn it back on.
Right. One question I would love to hear your take on is, like, I don't have this yet. I'm still on the old autopilot system, which when you're sitting in an intersection and you look at your screen, you see cars and trucks like jittering all over the screen. And this new one doesn't appear to do that. It seems to have object permanence, like a little kid. It actually understands where things are. What's your take between the old system, like when you used to use autopilot, like on a highway, versus this? Like, is it night and day, or are there subtle differences between the two?
And I think the biggest change for highway comes with the removal of the radar. And I will say I was pretty skeptical of that move. Now, I'm not like a hardware engineer or software guy, so just skeptical from, the things I have read about it. And I was totally wrong to be skeptical because the radar, or I should say the vision braking is so good compared to the radar braking. Now, one thing you'll notice, and it will probably, you'll be like, whoa, the first time you experience it, the vision braking versus radar starts the braking process a little later than the radar did. And so as you're going towards these stopped cars, you'll have a thought like, ooh, I would be slowing down already and the car's not. But then it sees the cars, it begins braking, and the braking is so incredibly smooth every time. It is very good. Whether you're coming around a bend, going straight at them, somebody moves out of the way, and then there's, a stopped car there. Those types of things would trip up the radar, whereas the vision seems to handle them so well. So that's probably the biggest difference you would notice on the highway. And then in terms of, you can see in this clip, all those cars are rock solid. I mean, they're not jiggling at all.
Yeah.
That difference is night and day. It's a totally different, like, forget everything you know about autopilot and full self-driving. It's a totally different system you're using.
Right. We have a super chat from Gary Itano.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Gary, for the super chat. And he asks, how do interventions affect the safety scores? And we need to talk about the safety score thing too.
Yeah, for sure. So quick overview, safety scores. If you don't have the beta yet, you drive safely, whatever Tesla thinks is safely. And if you have a high enough score, they'll let you have the beta. Well, once you get the beta, your safety score is actually removed. So when the beta testers, the original beta testers got this 10.2 update, we had a safety score for about 24 hours in our app, and then it disappeared. So anyone that's entered into the beta no longer has a safety score. Now, interventions on the public build, from what I hear, they're not good because you're usually turning the wheel to avoid something, or you're hitting the brake hard because the autopilot isn't doing it when you want to. And since you've taken over, that mistake that autopilot made is on you. So yeah, you want to avoid those safely, of course, if you can.
Yeah, the last time we talked, like Ricky and I had a show, I was complaining about how flawed I think the algorithm is that they have for their current safety score, because I got knocked on something that was just ridiculous, and it took me from having 100 down to 72, and there was nothing I did wrong. Like there was no danger, but it was a situation that just knocked my score down, and it made me realize that their algorithm needs some serious work. And I mean, Elon has commented publicly that their algorithm has flaws, and they're going to work on it, and will get better over time. How do you feel about having such a flawed system determining who gets to go into the beta program?
Yeah, I think, the classic example is like stopping for a yellow, right? That's bad to the safety score, but blasting through the yellow is good. I think that the important part of the safety score is it makes you pay so much attention to what you are doing, what the car is doing. And you are at all times like hyper analyzing what's going on in the car around you, how you're controlling it. Now, again, maybe those things don't technically make it actually safer, but it puts your brain kind of in the mode it needs to be in for this beta. Because and I think that's the biggest benefit of the safety score, because when you're using this beta, you're not like, if you're used to autopilot, you put it on and you kind of chill. You're still paying attention, of course, but you're relaxed. You're like, oh, this is so nice. Beta is opposite of that. Beta's like, I better be ready here because the car's going to want to, take a left out of nowhere. Now, I'm being dramatic. Those things don't happen that often, but they can. And so you really need to be as attentive as you are for safety score. Like in that same mode, you need to be like that for this as well.
Right. Yeah. Go ahead, Ricky.
No, I'll just jump in real quick. There was a question just above Gary's super chat. Raymond says, and we were talking about this before the show. He says, do you think the B pillar camera is the limiting factor for FSD?
It's such a hard decision. The way the way I usually answer this is think of it this way. If Tesla right now had 2 cameras in the headlights right now, if that was in the car, do you think they would have solved self-driving? Do you think these cars would be level 4 right now with those cameras there? Probably not.
No. Yeah.
So right now I do not. No, I don't believe it's the limiting factor. But yeah, I do agree that more cameras would give more information to the car.
Have you had that same experience? I know some of the beta testers early on that I spoke with, they've all kind of mentioned that one of the most challenging things is coming out of to make a left turn into a busy intersection where there's no light. You're just at like kind of a stop and the traffic is going 45, 50 miles an hour potentially. And you got to turn left into it. We as humans, it's a very hair raising kind of thing to do to begin with. We have to kind of creep into the intersection and keep getting in further. And if there's parked cars, that becomes immensely more challenging because it really does obscure your vision. So have you had issues with that, left turns where you're at?
Yeah. So I live very rural. So we have a lot of these situations. Actually, my drive to work, the second turn I take, I'm turning off of a dirt road onto a road that speed limit is 55, but people go 60 or more. And the car actually realizes this. And what my car does since the day I got the beta up until yesterday when I was using it, it stops at the stop sign, it begins to creep forward, and then it shows me a little message on the bottom of the screen, and it says, high-speed cross traffic, unable to complete maneuver, or it basically asks me to help it. It says, like, I'm not comfortable doing this, you go ahead and take this one. And so I have a lot of situations like that, and that does seem to be the most difficult, not even just left turns, just the high-speed traffic that when you're going onto a road. And I think that's part of kind of what I mentioned earlier, where the beta accelerates pretty quickly. I think that's part of the tactic there is the car's like, okay, it's clear, go. I better get out of the way before somebody shows up here. Which, I mean, I do the same thing, right? You're like, I think it's good. I'm going to just kind of take off. So,
I mean,
kind of.
I was going to say, do you think the current state of the beta, this is one question I'm struggling with myself. They're charging, was it $10,000 for full self-driving today? Do you think it's worth the money today?
That's so I've done a lot of videos and talked about this a lot over the years, as the price has been increasing, and I've never recommended it for the price. When it was 6,000 or 7, I've never said like, yeah, it's worth 6,000, you should pay for this. Beta, I think for some people it is worth 10,000 if you're the right kind of person for this. If you think you're going to turn beta on and just be like, oh, yep, I'm on my way to work, see you later. No, it's not for you. But if you're into the tech, if you think this kind of stuff is cool, if you want like the most advanced self-driving software available to the public, not exactly to the public, but we're getting there, then you want it. I mean, it's fun. I use this. I have never turned it off ever since I got it on my car. Because if I was sick of this, I can just toggle it off in the settings. I have never done that one time. I use this.
You don't miss driving at all?
No, I hate driving. I've always hated
Really?
driving. When I was, first out of college at one of my first jobs, I had my old I had a Grand Am, a 2001 Grand Am, and I was driving into Detroit, every day, and it took me an hour to go 20 miles because of all the traffic. And I saw this ad for, I don't know, probably Mercedes or one of these really expensive cars. And it was like, stop and go assist or whatever they called it, where the car could do stop and go traffic for you up to like 15 miles an hour or something. And I was like, oh my gosh, my next car's having that. That was before I even knew what Tesla was or anything. So yeah, I don't like driving. I love beta. I use it 99% of the time. I pretty much only am driving if I have to take over. Like that's the only time. So for somebody like me that's into tech and thinks this stuff is fun, I do think the value is there. $10,000 is different to different people, but yeah.
Yeah, it's we're all early adopters, all three of us. And a lot of the audience is also early adopters, which brings me to, okay, they're charging $10,000 to get into a software package that's really only meant for early adopters. Like, would you feel comfortable? Like, put yourself in the shoes of just the average Joe on the street, somebody who's not into tech, isn't on the blazing trail. Would you think they'd feel comfortable in a car with the current state?
No, I don't think so. I mean, especially if you don't know anything about it. No, I don't think you would like that. But, and at this point, Tesla's intentionally keeping them out, right? If you're getting beta right now, it's because you clicked a button, you clicked a bunch of, okay, I want it. And then you spent 3 weeks driving like a weirdo trying to get your score to 99 or 100. And then it finally is on your car. And that was the biggest reason I was surprised by people's surprise. I don't know how else to put that, because you knew what you were doing. You spent all this time driving around all strange, and then you get it on your car and you're like, what? This isn't what I wanted. So that's very surprising to me.
Sanjay Mehta is in the chat. He said that the Mercedes tech you were talking about was called like Distronic back in the day, something like that.
Distronic. So, okay, yeah, I couldn't remember what it's called.
They've always got a good name for this stuff.
Yeah, I remember seeing the commercial because those legacy guys like to advertise, and they got me with that.
So I was thinking one of the things I was just thinking about when you're talking about the challenges with like high speed cross traffic or even just like front on, you mentioned like it breaks a little bit later on. So one of the biggest safety dangers with aviation is a head-on collision. And the reason is if you imagine like take an object like far in the horizon and look at it, like every n feet that it moves, its apparent increase in size is almost nominal, right? It's negligible. Until it gets closer, then all of a sudden now every foot it moves, like the angle that it's taken up in your periphery it just goes like asymptotic, right? So the problem with the head-on collision with vision, radar has no problem with this. Radar would be able to tell you 800 feet, 750 feet, 700 feet, 650 feet, right? But with vision, you think, I'm never gonna hit him, and all of a sudden he's on you like that, right? So any kind of a situation where there's perceived changes in distance with vision, we kind of fall prey to this phenomena. So that's where probably the computer will break later because it doesn't detect any perceived difference, especially with a 2 megapixel camera. But then once it's kind of tracking it and it knows what's going on, it's going to perform better probably. But it's it's interesting, right? This is the game. You got to kind of figure out the best balance of everything.
Yeah, I agree with that. I actually had, I don't know if you care to show this, Matt, but did I mess it up? Yeah, right here. This is oh, no, I think I missed it. Sorry. I don't want to spend too much time clicking around here, but I had at some point in this video, I have like a head-on kind of interaction. Now it's low speed and the guy is decently close to me. So it's definitely not dealing with the problem you just talked about, with it being really far away. But it handled it pretty well. I mean, it moved over. I would have personally moved over a little bit more. But as the truck coming at me had to go around somebody, so they came, halfway or so into my lane, and my car just kind of just moved over and avoided it. So that wasn't a problem. But I understand what you're saying, and I really think if we're going to talk about, I think, yeah, right here. So this guy kind of comes into my lane. We're facing each other, and my car just slightly moves over just a little bit and then centers itself again. So again, low speed, not too dangerous.
It's still
I think
pretty
if we're going to
impressive.
it's good. Oh yeah, it's very impressive.
Yeah.
I think if we were to talk about what Tesla's going to update next, what I've been thinking about is exactly what you said. 2 megapixel cameras. Come on, they're going to upgrade the resolution of these cameras, along probably with hardware 4 would be my guess.
I mean, put your prediction cap on. This one's going to be a tough question because it's like you're not going to have actual knowledge on this, but like based on the progression that you're seeing and how it's improving, when do you think that this might get rolled out to basically everybody, even if it's still called a beta? But like, when's it going to be widely available? Do you think it's like a year away, 2 years away, or does it feel like it's going to happen sooner than that?
Oh, I would say sooner than that. I really think they want it wide by the end of the year, and that they are doing this slow rollout to kind of, the more people you add, the more chance of an accident. And if this was to everybody, even if this was level 5, right? If you rolled this out to everybody, you're going to have an accident pretty quickly. It's just the way it works. So I think they're doing this slow rollout to see how close people are getting to having an accident, and how many people are avoiding accidents, things like that. And so to this day, there still hasn't been one, which for even just the 2,000, if you take 2,000 people and watch them for a year, to have no accidents is like pretty cool. So the fact that the beta has had none looks really good. I think that there's a little too much discounting. I'm not saying you're doing this, but I think there's a little too much discounting of like the people who own these cars, because when you get this beta, as long as you don't, blindly think this is level 5, it's your car, right? You're responsible. You're not going to let it drive off a cliff or crash into somebody if you're paying attention. But that's true for any car on the road today. If I'm paying attention, I'm not going to let my Equinox, my wife's car, I'm not going to let that crash into a wall because I'm going to hit the brake. It's the same thing here, except the car can kind of do some stuff too.
That kind of raises the question of like how other autonomy companies like Waymo and the other ones are like, they need to get permits and permissions to test their stuff in different cities, partly because they're like robotaxis. They're testing out something that's completely different than this, where this is meant as a driver assist feature. And like you just mentioned, it's our car. We are motivated to make sure that it's operating properly. What's your take on the different approaches? Do you think Tesla's playing a little too fast and loose, or do you think that they're doing it appropriately for what their system's intended for?
Yeah. These are really difficult.
I think that's their biggest advantage, is that they get to get all of their buyers of their cars as the people who get to help them test it, as opposed to Waymo or anybody else who has to go and try to do a robo-taxi thing with other people and other cars. This is Tesla's biggest advantage, I think, is a million cars on the road, and everybody, like you mentioned, is eager to get this. I mean, if Elon was making phone calls and said, "Hey, Matt, FSD, you want it?" I think you're going to go, yes, please. Right?
Yeah,
so it's something that everybody wants. We all have a ton of cars. This might be, I think this is why Tesla is so far ahead. They're also just brilliant and really good at this too. But this is one of those things that you couple those two together, tough to beat.
Yeah, this actually kind of is probably a good point to transition into some of the competition and talk about how it compares and what's going on. Because just recently, GM announced that they're trying to, their Super Cruise is now called, there's a version of it that's going to be called Ultra Cruise, and they're going to be releasing this. Their goal is to have this out in 2023, which is probably not that far off from where Tesla's probably going to land with their stuff. So they're saying that this is going to be a direct competitor to what Tesla can do. And they're also claiming it's going to leapfrog them, which, that's marketing PR stuff. But it came out of, for me, this kind of came out of nowhere. I was not expecting this as soon as they were claiming it's going to happen. So if they can hit 2023, that's much further along than I was expecting. And then they're also talking about how they're going to be with their Cruise. They're planning on having 1 million robotaxis by the end of the decade, which I think is underselling what the potential of a robotaxi fleet. If that seems kind of low to me, but they got goals, so they're going to try to hit 1 million. Then you've got companies like Waymo, like I brought it before. Like Ricky, you've ridden in one too, right? Yeah.
No, I haven't.
Oh, you haven't? I thought you had ridden one, because I've ridden in Waymo, And as I got to tell you, I was very impressed with the tech. It was riding around, Arizona in a car that was completely driving itself everywhere we went. It was really, really good. And they've been announcing recently that they have a new version of their LiDAR system. And I know we can talk about LiDAR a little bit, but like this image is kind of astonishing. Let me bring it up. So their new LiDAR, this is a LiDAR image. It almost looks like a photograph. There's so many dots and it's so precise that it's basically a perfect 3D image from a LiDAR system. And I know Elon talks about LiDAR being a crutch, and most of the competition is using LiDAR and radar in one form or another. And then Tesla is the only one that's kind of planting their flag saying it's go vision or go home. What's your take on the different approaches on this?
Well, again, I'm not an engineer in any way,
Yeah.
so I'm just a fanboy who
Yeah.
reads a lot about this stuff. But I will say, back in the day, a few years ago, before what was it? Before Autonomy Day, I had kind of the thought are using LiDAR, and Tesla's not. And Tesla's like, oh, we don't need it. And I was kind of like, how can Tesla know? And all these other companies, like, it just seems strange. Until Autonomy Day, when people kept bringing up LiDAR, and Elon said, listen, we use LiDAR at SpaceX. It's great for what it does. It's on the rockets. We use it. It's not for autonomy. And that's when I was kind of like, all right, I guess I should listen to the guy. He uses it in other applications. He knows what it's capable of. So there's a reason he doesn't want to rely on it for these self-driving cars. So, maybe that's what it is. So ever since then, I've kind of been like, all right, Tesla probably knows what they're doing. These guys are a lot smarter than I am. It doesn't mean they're right. They could be wrong, and maybe LiDAR's needed, and they'll add it in eventually. But
Yeah, that's kind of my take of I personally do not care if it's all vision or it's got LiDAR or radar. It's like,
Yeah,
as long as
drive
the
me.
yeah, exactly. As long as the product they make is cost effective and affordable and competitive, it's like, who cares what the underlying tech is, whether it's just cameras or it has LiDAR. I see a lot of comments in the community about, like, if it's got LiDAR, the Elon Musk point of view of if it's got LiDAR, they're going nowhere. I'm not in that camp because the prices of LiDAR is dropping pretty quickly, and the size of it is dropping and getting smaller, more effective. So it's the costs may come in line at some point where Waymo's tech is not going to be that much more expensive than what Tesla's currently doing. And if it works, it works. So why care?
Yeah,
Right.
part of the cost of LiDAR is not in the sensors, but it's in like combing through the data. So trying to make like some sort of like a vector field out of LiDAR data points and getting the same sort of thing that we're doing from a 2 megapixel camera it just takes more compute power to do that. So potentially there might come a point when, I don't know if you guys are Apple fans, but I want to get that new M1 Max Pro Ultra, whatever that thing's called. It's a really stupid name, but an incredible CPU. With 32 cores of graphics cores and stuff. There might come a point very near term where like there's an ARM processor that could do the sort of heavy lifting that we need at 60 frames per second to make LiDAR more feasible. But yeah, I think Elon's point is LiDAR is incredible for like really detailed imaging. But driving a car is not like that. In a car, it's like inches and feet. You're not trying to like dock a lunar module to an ISS or something like that. It's not that sort of fidelity or detail. So I do get his point about that. There's at the same time, I'm not saying LiDAR is dead or anybody who's doing it is not gonna succeed, but it's interesting, right? It's a completely different approach, and who wins out? What does the future look like in a couple of years? It's hard to tell. But I mean, he's been right about so much. It's hard to bet against him. That's the one thing I'll say.
Yeah, for sure. As much as you want to, and as much as he's late with things, it's just gotten to the point where I'm like, I need to just listen to this guy, and he probably knows what he's talking about. He's not infallible. I'm not, like that kind of fanboy where everything he says is scripture or something. But yeah, I mean, he's been right. He has good teams of people that are very smart doing these things. And I do really like Tesla's reasoning of how do you drive a car today with vision? It's not even that good a vision. You can't see everywhere all the time. The roads, the infrastructure is built based on vision. Like, that's why the roads are the way they are. So I like that reasoning of why they're doing what they're doing.
My concerns with vision come down to like you brought up, the resolution of the cameras bothers me. It's like I have very high resolution on my eyes, and so do you. So it's like we can see very fine details, and the cameras that are in a car right now are not high resolution enough. And I wonder if they're going to have to update that down the road, because
They will.
Yeah.
They will. I mean,
So-
they will. It's a fact. Yeah.
The one thing I've always thought about this has nothing to do with the technology or the teams doing this stuff. So the knife dude says, "Did you see the Sandy Monroe rant about Missy from NHTSA? There's a new appointment, and she's kind of anti-Tesla." This gets into my concern with this, right? Elon Musk and Tesla might have the greatest thing in the whole world, and they've solved it. It doesn't matter if the regulators say X, Y, and Z are the requirements, and if you don't have it, you can't operate here, right? I am an engineer. I could build the footings and pour the concrete and build my own house on my property. I'm confident. I know what I'm doing. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. If I don't have the permitting, if I don't have the process, the city can come and tear it down or whatever they can do, right? That's the outlying problem. Is doesn't matter how smart you are or how good you are, you got to fall in line with regulators. And we've already seen that the current administration, and really every government is going to do this. They're going to be very heavy-handed in how they tackle this. And all it would take is, here are the requirements. You need to have a 5-megapixel camera. You have to be able to discern this sign from this distance, like a driving test kind of a thing. It must have blank or LiDAR. I don't know. I'm making this up. But if they did that, the argument is over. It's not an engineering challenge. And that's what a lot of people get caught up in, is the engineering part of it. Well, when the most brilliant engineers are working on this problem, I'm not too worried about that. I do think they'll get there. Will we need better cameras or better hardware? Maybe. But the regulator part, what do you guys think about that?
Well, I think that the policy debate is going to come down to the facts. I don't think it's going to be the whole Missy fiasco that has sprung up over the past few days. I think it's completely out of hand and everybody's panicking for nothing. I think this is much ado about nothing. I don't think anything's going to come of this, because it comes down to the facts. Like when they're trying to put down policy, Tesla is going to be right there showing all the data of their drivers, the effectiveness of the systems. They're going to be able to provide all of that, which is going to be damning for you have to have LiDAR. I don't see that happening, but I do see that there is going to be resistance and pushback no matter what. So there's going to be a very big policy debate coming up in every country around the world around this, because this is going to be a very hot topic everywhere, no matter what you do.
Sadly, the way this always goes down is, think about all the big money interest. There's a lot of people who make a living driving, which probably aren't going to love seeing this emerge quickly. And there's also a general fear. If you're an average person and you're telling me Tesla, and for Tesla, Tesla is very polarizing. People like us who are kind of early adopters, we love Tesla. We love the technology. Other people hate Tesla. I've met a lot of people, especially recently, who aren't opposed to an electric car, but they will never buy it from Tesla, who don't believe or trust some computer who's driving a car compared to a person. Even if you tell them this computer is far superior to that old man who's, 5 times more likely to collide with you. It doesn't really matter. It's a perceptions thing. We still have 2 pilots in every aircraft, almost for no reason. But it's just people feel safe when there's a guy with a hat in the plane with them. So it's a combination of perception and public and fear and regulators and lobbying interests and money and kind of all kind of feeding together, I think, personally. But
Yeah, it's getting a little bit into murky waters, but I'll say I don't exactly agree with you, Matt. I wish you were right, but you're saying it comes down to the facts, and I don't know if that's always true with government decisions and regulations, because there's a lot of things we have facts about that. It's like, oh, wait, why is this legal and this is not, or vice versa?
But given the Tesla community, if anything like that did come out, the world will catch on fire, because
oh, for sure, at least on Twitter it would.
That's part of why I say it's like I'm not worried about it at all. It's like when it comes down to, if they tried to do a policy where you have to have LiDAR, there would be a furor like that would be like nothing you've ever seen before. So I'm not too worried about it.
Well, you would hope Tesla they obviously have the data of miles driven and accidents, all that. You would hope that they could present that data to a third party, an auditor, show that that's, legit. And then that would be like, oh, wow, this is very safe. Let's move ahead. But, another question, and this one, Elon Musk talked about recently, like, this is actually the thing that bothers me the most, is if you have a fully self-driving car, it works, it's great, and it has 10% accident rate of, humans. There's still people getting in accidents. There's still people potentially dying or getting injured. All of those are attributed to, let's say, Tesla, or GM, whoever comes out with that first, rather than like, oh, put this guy in jail, take this guy's license away. Even though there's less overall, you now have all of these negative events attributed to one entity. How do you ever get past that? And I do not ever see, I mean, you have train crashes, right? Even trains derail. I don't ever see self-driving cars where there's no accidents anymore. Of course, it will be significantly, greatly reduced, but the accidents will never disappear forever. And so if I put my kid in a car, a self-driving car 10 years from now, that only gets in an accident every billion miles, and that's my kid, come on, Tesla, like, what's wrong with you, So I think that's going to be one of the hardest things to overcome for humans, just because we're like that.
Very good point. Yeah, who's to blame in a car accident when it's the company's software doing the driving is going to be something that's going to be a thorny issue for years and years and years.
Oh, yeah, forever. Yeah.
Well, I think do you want to open it up to viewer questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, sure. Can I mention one more thing about, because I took a ride with, I don't know if you guys have heard of May Mobility. It's another self-driving startup. Yeah, I had not heard of them, but they just started. It's actually a free taxi service in Ann Arbor, right by where I work, and so I took that last week, their first week, and I was like kind of hoping for the Waymo experience. I've never been in a Waymo where you sit down, there's nobody in the driver's seat. This like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But they have a safety driver, which like whatever, and it has cameras and LiDAR and radar. Okay, it has it all. And the guy's telling me it can't make right on red right now, which I know they can just, program on or off. It doesn't do right on red. It can attempt unprotected lefts, but I guess it's very bad at them and usually won't do them. And some of the quirks that it had, I could not believe how similar it was to the car I own today. Things like stopping at the stop sign a little slow and then just really awkwardly like, oh, who's going to go, or some of the little phantom brakes. Now, I will say for sure this car had far less phantom braking in the route that I did, and the braking was very gentle. But there was a time where there was a guy on the sidewalk, and he kind of took a step towards the road, and the car kind of stopped, it didn't stop, but it kind of hit the brakes a little bit. And I said to the driver, I was like, oh, that was the car, right? And he goes, yeah, I probably thought that guy was going to come out. That really made me appreciate Tesla's software at this point in time today a lot more, because I'm pretty critical. When we get little phantom brakes and all this weird stuff, I'm like, come on, get this out of here. Like, this is basic driving stuff. But for this other company that has all the sensors and just focuses on that, I was surprised at how similar the experience was.
Yeah, my experience in a Waymo was it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. Like I
want to try it.
It did a left-hand turn on a 3-lane, highway, and it drove it just like I would have. The light's going yellow and it's inching into the intersection so they can go right when the traffic stops, and it went through perfectly. There was no phantom braking. It was like, I was extremely impressed. I don't think full self-driving is at that level today, but of course Waymo is working on high resolution mapping and LiDAR and all these other crutches, I guess you could say, but it's for where I experienced it, it was astonishingly good. But they even admitted to me when I talked to them, like, their system, you can't just take their car and plunk it anywhere in the world. It has to be, it's only in specific like geofenced areas that it works that well, which is a current limitation of their system. And they admitted like they're working hard to do what Tesla's doing. They're trying to get to the point where you can take a Waymo car and put it anywhere and it will just work. So they're all trying to get to the same exact destination. They're just going in different paths to get there. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
That's actually a really interesting direction these companies are headed in, as far as the general solution with Tesla, which, like, as a software engineer, the general solution is very appealing. There's something about, I don't care about the parameters. Here's the thing, throw some stuff at it, you'll get the right thing out of it. That's the dream. That's always the dream. But could Waymo actually beat them to market in terms of like, okay, in Phoenix, Arizona, you hail a cab and you're paying pennies on the dollar for a cab ride because a Waymo is going to come pick you up and it'll operate in this region without any issue. And they just keep mapping and growing this region out. But they're slowly iterating, and then they go out to New York City and San Francisco, and they just expand this operation into more and more cities, kind of like an old-fashioned kind of an expansion plan instead of over the air everywhere all the time, like Tesla's doing. But over time, what if like you said, what if over time that strategy proves to be a winning one? Because for Tesla, they're not going to be able to have robo-taxis until it's perfectly working and it's reliable. And Waymo maybe goes, well, we're making money today in Phoenix. I mean, it's just in one city or two cities, but we'll take that money. We'll keep LiDAR mapping and or whatever.
Yeah, that's a legit approach as well. Yeah.
Well, did you hear what happened to Waymo in San Francisco?
Yes.
Their taxis ended up going down this one-way street just constantly because of the way the street signs, I guess in San Francisco, there's like slow streets and like one-way streets. And so it was seeing these signs that had been put up for slow streets, and it was being the way it calculated its route. It kept taking them, every taxi that tried to go this one direction, down this like dead-end street. So about every 5 minutes, a Waymo taxi would come down, go around, and leave. Come down, go around, and leave. And the
Matt,
neighborhood was
the
like
high
was like
definition maps.
I know.
How could this happen?
But it comes down to the routing software. Like how do you route what path you need to take? That was the problem. Is like there was some quirk in their software that kept sending them down this one street. Oh yeah, nothing's perfect.
Yeah, that was funny.
Yeah.
That's a good bug though. I mean, it wasn't running over puppies or anything, so I'll take that one over something, it driving into a wall or something.
Yeah, agreed.
The knife dude says China will just breeze right on past us as long as they don't get in the way to slow down the most innovative companies, so that the ones which have refused innovation can try to catch up. This is kind of alluding to Mark says 100%. Sandy Monroe mentioned this in his rant yesterday. Sandy's been increasingly critical of some of the things that are happening, especially with the government. And yeah, it's a fair point.
Yeah.
What a weird thing to say, that China is going to be the ones that are going to innovate because our governments aren't getting in the way compared to us here in the U.S. That's
like
bonkers. If you told me I'd be saying those words 10 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you.
When I was talking about GM earlier in the Ultra Cruise system, GM has invested something like $300 million into Momenta, which is a Chinese self-driving company. So it's like there's big companies over there that are making big progress. But one of the reasons they had to do that, though, was this company has, I guess, a permit for gathering high-definition maps in China. So if you want to get high-definition maps of China, you have to go through somebody like Momenta. So that could have been why that GM was doing it.
That's very interesting. So, what issue is FSD having that Waymo has solved? That's a good question, actually.
Yeah.
It sounds like to me, from what Matt was saying, it's really just a higher level of like fit and finish or polish on various aspects as opposed to any one thing. Would that be fair?
I think that'd be fair. I mean, I haven't actually ridden in a full self-driving Tesla yet, but the ease of left-hand turns and right-hand turns on red, and the way it handled stop signs, the way it pulled out onto high-speed roads from a parking lot, it felt like a human being was in the car that had experience driving. It was a very experienced driving experience. So it's like within the first 30 seconds, I forgot that a computer was driving the car, and it was fantastic. So I think it's just the polish that Tesla probably has to catch up on. But the basic functionality is all the same, it sounds like.
If you want a beta ride, let's collab. I'll meet you halfway. To something funny people ask me a lot is like, oh, what do you want the next update, to add? What do you want the next? And I'm like, I want it to drive me point A to point B with zero interventions. Like that's what I want. So yeah, it can attempt everything. It's just kind of goofy a lot of the time.
Yeah, it's like that 99% functionality. It's that last, was it the Battle of the Nines? It's like getting that, working those out is the hardest part.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd say 99%, but sure.
80%?
More than that, yeah. It's up there. It's somewhere around there.
Krissa says the routing problem. This is why Tesla's process is superior. As drivers who choose their route, you're invested in what and where the car is going. The Waymo driver is not.
That is a very good point. The driver in Waymo, they're not supposed to touch it. So where the car wants to go, the car wants to go, and they only take over if something bad's about to happen. So that's true.
What if the entirety of Waymo is just some guy in a car? The car takes him somewhere, and he goes, "Yep, that's where I wanted to go. It's amazing, and I'm here." But it wasn't. It was all just. No, I'm just kidding. I feel like some like Family Guy sketch or something. But
Yeah.
Simon says, "Will Tesla upgrade the resolution of their cameras again?" we're talking about high tech stuff. There's no, why would high tech and groundbreaking, early adopter, why would that stop with hardware in the cars, right? Of course, we'll have better cameras, we'll have better hardware. Like the hardware 3 computers we have right now are ancient in terms of like what we can do today. Like I mentioned with Apple. Apple is kind of completely blown my mind with some of the stuff they're doing with chips. But the hardware 3 is a dinosaur. We're not going to just keep using that. Of course, there'll be a hardware 4. The problem with, and I think what Tesla understands is they want to try to keep them running for a while. So that way you're optimizing the software, not just relying on better and better hardware, because that's not a good approach either. But yeah, I think they will have a hardware 4, and I think as far as the cameras, I'm not sure if they're going to upgrade the camera resolution, but I know they're going to have better SoCs, because I mean we've come a long way in a couple of years.
Yeah, here's a question for Chris. Do you think Tesla will have the car go out into the intersection with no protected left turn anytime soon? I've noticed in Dirty's videos, he has to sit through multiple cycles.
Yeah, that's a big problem right now, is when you get up to an unprotected left where, you have to yield, it waits near the stop line, unlike a person that moves into the intersection. And then actually, I've learned so much about driving laws. I guess the law in Michigan is that if you're in the intersection when the light turns red, you can finish the maneuver. So it's not illegal to go through that red light. And so the car will sit back there, and if there's too much traffic and it turns yellow, then it's not going to go. So yeah, that is a big thing that they do need to add, is waiting in the intersection. Now it gets a little weird, because when you're in the intersection, you can't see the light anymore. Again, to me and you is not a big deal, but to the car, is it going to get tripped up? I don't know. It could be something that confuses it.
That's a really good point. And you already talked about this, but RC DIY asked, how often do you use full self-driving versus not?
Oh yeah, as much as possible. I always have it on. Well, the only time I don't have it on is if my wife's in the car. She doesn't like it.
She's an early adopter?
Not even close. No, she doesn't like the phantom braking at all. She gets very, very annoyed by that. And, I mean, I don't blame her, but just even the little ones, just are too annoying for her. So I turn it on, and then the second it makes a mistake, she's like, all right, let's stop.
So one thing I want to ask you, Chris, because you've seen some of the updates, and I mean, it's one thing to drive in the car. I've been in the car twice now. But you've seen like incremental upgrades, you've seen over the air stuff that's improved upon things, maybe regressed some things, but having that kind of longer time horizon. If I had to have you guess, when would FSD be truly capable of, you get in the car and you take me to Chili's, and it just does it without intervention? How, is it months? Is it years? What would you guess?
Well, I mean, it's possible today. I do every once in a while have a zero intervention drive. It does happen, but it's if I'm really like gunning for it. So there's two ways to look at this. Number one, like I'm still fully in control of the car, right? So when we go to a stop sign, let's say, and it's kind of creeping out, and there's nobody there, and I hit the accelerator, it's like, oh, come on, let's go. Like, I don't want to wait. If this was actually level 5 and I'm sitting there on my phone or asleep or something, and that same move is happening, nobody cares. Like, I'm not going to interact, and it would make it there with no intervention. So I do have zero intervention drives today, occasionally. As far as when they'll become normal, it's so hard to say, because, a year ago, my car couldn't even attempt to do a right turn, and then I got a software update overnight, and it's doing right turns and left turns and roundabouts and, all this stuff. So it's one software update away, honestly. In terms of like taking the progress into account, I think like within a year, like by the end of 2022, I think this is going to be better than a lot of people expect, especially people that aren't paying attention. But even like for myself, like I'll hold myself accountable for this. I think in a year it will be better than I think it will be. Because like I said, I'm pretty critical of it.
It's funny. There was a comment earlier. I'll try to see if I can find it. But somebody mentioned that, the rate of, I think it was Rui. He mentioned that the rate of improvement with things like computer learning and AI is so dramatic that it's almost hard to perceive for humans. Like we don't totally see it coming. That kind of feeds to what you're saying, where this thing might be getting better, and there's a couple of outliers that need to get addressed or improved upon, but the rate of acceleration can be so vast that this could come faster than we think it could. But then there's the other, but then there's the other side too. Sanjay Mehta says, my plaid car had a summon fail and hit a wall in my carport. That didn't go all the
no.
way to the ground. Not confidence inspiring. Sanjay,
Yeah, no.
Sanjay is the guy we met and fully charged. He's got a bunch of cool electric cars, all kinds of cars.
Oh,
So I
cool.
mean, this is the sort of thing that does also happen, and I'm torn on this one. Like it's. I think we're going to be like the 90, 80% thing. I think we're already there probably. As you mentioned, you've already have zero disengagement drives now. But man, in software, that last little bit can be so pesky. It can take so long. I'm not sure. Matt, you still hold true to what you always said a couple years?
I think we're going to see full self-driving in a couple of years. I don't think it's going to happen as fast as a lot of the fans think it's going to happen. I don't doubt it's going to happen. I just think it's going to take a little longer because it's that working down those from 99%, 0.99 point, trying to get to that level. It's like it's going to take a long road to get there. I have plenty of people in my life that are not early adopter. They're technophobes, and they're not going to be comfortable in the car even when it is 99.9% accurate. And you have 0%, zero interventions for most of your drives. It's like they're still not going to be comfortable in it. So I keep thinking about the mass market. It's like we have to take ourselves out of the equation because we're not normal. We're the 1% that are all, yeah, let's get this. And the
Right.
vast majority of people are going to be very reluctant to get into a car that is driving itself like this. And that's going to make it years down the road, even if the technology is there.
Good point. And we're maybe still thinking about North America or the U.S. One of the questions that was probably I don't think about enough. William Fish says, does FSD work just as well in Europe? So this kind of gets again to the general solution versus programmed approach, right? In code, you can either have abstract variables or you can hard code things in that are not adjustable. But taking a right turn, well, that's a function of how wide your roads are and how your roads are laid out. In Europe, those roads are tiny, especially in certain older towns and stuff. So will it work just as well everywhere because it's a very robust system, or do you have to like manually change hard coded values? Those are the kinds of questions that would answer that question. But I'm hoping yes, it would work as well.
Yeah. Well, from my experience, I will say it is very good with kind of what you mentioned, the thinner roads and wider roads. It doesn't seem to care so much. I live on dirt roads, and my driveway is a gravel driveway. The second I get out of my garage, I can turn it on in my gravel driveway, and it'll drive out of my little driveway. It's a 150-foot driveway, and it has a big bend in it, so it'll go around the bend. My outside of my driveway is a little cul-de-sac, but it's like a dirt cul-de-sac, and it's just grass in the middle. And actually, through the middle of the grass is tire tracks because for whatever reason, everybody wants to drive on it, which annoys me to no end. My car does not, though. My car goes around this little grass dirt cul-de-sac, drives down the dirt road, takes a right, and it does fine. When a car is approaching on these thin dirt roads, it moves over it. It doesn't have a problem. So as
That's
far
amazing.
as like
There's no markers, are there? You don't have any kind of.
no, it's just dirt. It's just dirt and now it doesn't avoid
That's
the potholes,
amazing.
which is annoying. It's very cool. I have it in a few different videos if you want to see it, but it's very impressive actually. Now, so I think if you were to pick my car up and plop it in Europe, it'll turn on. It'll try to do what it can. It would make far more mistakes, but this comes back to regulators, of course, and everything. But I think that if Tesla even just gets the level 4, let's say, in the U.S., that's amazing still. And I think that sets them ahead of a lot of people, and then they could go from there.
Yeah, this question has been asked a few times. When do you think full self-driving beta will be rolled out to people with scores of 99?
Oh, Friday. I mean, it's scheduled for Friday. And even yesterday, I think Elon said we're still on track for, the next version to come out Friday. But I mean, Ricky can probably answer this better, but when you do software, sometimes software, you find a bug at the last second, you got to delay it a day or something, so that's been happening since before this rollout. So even us on the beta, he would either Elon would say, or we'd get an email that would be like, oh, your next update is coming tonight or something. And then it's like, oh, sorry, it's coming next week, or something, because we found whatever. So
Do we have any numbers on how many people have the beta today?
no, no, we don't know.
It started with a couple hundred. Where are we now? I'm kind of curious because Chris,
Well,
you've had it
it
forever,
was-
right? You had it.
I got it. No, so the initial testers, I believe, got it in October of 2020. I got it in November. And then up to the safety scores, it was about 2,000. I think most of those were employees that weren't allowed to share, is my guess. And then now that we're rolling out, I don't know, but it's increasing. It's increasing a lot. I mean, so Elon said that there were around 1,100 people that had a 100 safety score, right? So then if they all got it, we'd be at 3,100. But since then, it seems that every night, if you are able to bump your safety score up to 100, they're rolling it out every night. They're checking those safety scores. They're like checking every night and sending it to whoever achieves that.
So is it just a daily score then?
It's you get a daily score, but then
because I mean you could be a terrible driver and just try
it's averaging it over a course of drives.
It averages it, right? So you get a score per day.
But you can never get 100 then if you have a non-100 score and you average it.
Yeah, there's actually a calculator online you can use to figure it out. It'll tell you like, oh, if you drive 1,000 miles and get 100 for those 1,000 miles, then you'll be 100 or whatever.
That's amazing. I love that. Like I've mentioned in the past, like I used to work in game development, and so we would come up with game designs, and then you put it in front of players for the first time, and they do things with the game. You're like, oh crap, I didn't even think that you could do this. And so then you have to go back and redesign aspects of the game so that the scoring doesn't get so out of whack. It's like people are already gaming the scoring system that they've got.
Oh, that was days. Like, I mean, that was days after it came out. It's really crazy.
Yeah. Charlie just asked, how do you pull up your score? Just drive carefully.
There's all kinds of tips online. I didn't have a score, so I don't have any great tips for you, but read Tesla tells you exactly on the website what they're looking for. So yeah, you just got to read the tips online.
Yeah.
I don't know. I like the knife dude's answer. He says, hit the like button.
Hitting the like button makes your score go up.
Sure, but
it makes your score
I think
go
it'll
up.
inspire you. You'll feel better. You'll leave here recharged, ready to drive safe. Yeah, no.
Keep hitting it. Just don't stop. Well, I think that's probably a good place to stop for today. Any parting words for us, Chris?
No, if you're aiming to get the beta, just keep hoping it's coming. They really want to roll it out. Just hope that people are safe with it, because if things look good, they'll continue to roll it out. It's a lot of fun, but like no joke, I know if you have public autopilot, sometimes you're checking your phone. We've all done it. Beta is a different beast. Don't do it. It's seriously, like, you really got to be paying attention. It does really good most of the time, but that one time it catches you off guard, you're not gonna be happy. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Thanks so much for joining us again. It's awesome to have you here. If you aren't subscribed to him, subscribe to Dirty Tesla. Great channel, and he's putting out entire uncut clips of his full self-driving experience. I'm kind of addicted to watching them whenever you release them, so keep it up.
Yeah, if you want honest, genuine, good, bad, just a good balanced view, that's why we called Chris to join us today. I think he's at the top of our list of people that I love to watch, just to get a real indicative feeling of just where we are. So thank you so much, Chris, for joining us.
Agreed.
Yes, thank you both for having me. It was a lot of fun, and I enjoyed both of your videos as well.
Appreciate you. By the way, we had a very late minute super chat from the knife dude. We appreciate you. He's become quite a regular. Thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. You had some pretty funny comments earlier. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss an episode. And we're live every Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And you can always listen to the podcast version on the go on viceversa.show. As always, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.